More people are moving into South Bend than we've seen in a generation. Thousands of new jobs have been added in our area, billions in investment. Now, there's a long way for us to go, but we have changed our trajectory and shown a path forward for communities like ours. And that's why I'm here today, to tell a different story than Make America Great Again. Because there's a myth being sold to industrial and rural communities. The myth that we can stop the clock and turn it back. It comes from people who think the only way to speak to communities like ours is through resentment and nostalgia. They're selling an impossible promise of returning to a bygone era that was never as great as advertised to begin with.
That was Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg at his campaign kickoff event last weekend. Despite being essentially unknown a few months ago, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, has been a hot topic as of late. Buttigieg raised more than $7 million since launching his campaign. In a national Immersion poll conducted at the end of last week, Mayor Pete, as he's known, registered 9% support, passing more well-known candidates like former Congressman Beto O'Rourke and Senator Kamala Harris. Joining me now is Andy Downs. He's the director of the Mike Downs Center for Indiana Politics at Purdue University in Fort Wayne. Andy, thanks so much for being with us. What issues are most important to the Buttigieg campaign? What is he running on?
I think part of what he's running on is being different. You know, he obviously talks about his youth quite a bit, but he also talks about looking forward, not looking back. And I think there are some people who are saying that's good. But another component of this is he's running as a mayor. He's not trying to hide that fact. And he keeps pointing out to folks that mayors have to get things done. And right now, as people look at Congress, they see something that's fairly dysfunctional. And they would like to have a leader, I think, who will be able to get things done. So he has those things going for him. And this is a unique moment where that combination may work.
Well, looking at his tenure as mayor of South Bend, he declared that he was leading one of America's turnaround cities. Is that true, and is it something he can truly take credit for?
You know, when you're a mayor, you can't ever take full credit for anything because everything relies on partnerships of one kind or another. People talk about Chase Tower in downtown South Bend being revitalized as a hotel. They talk about the Studebaker plant where the announcement was made. And all of these things actually take private investment. But you need a mayor who's willing to not only champion those things, but try to marshal some resources to make that possible. And sometimes marshaling the resources means going to the state and asking them for help, or simply finding people in the community who are willing to take on a project. Then there's always the more mundane stuff, like changing the direction of streets from one way to two-way so that you have more viable options for businesses at ground level in buildings.
Well, what were the biggest local criticisms of Pete Buttigieg?
There really are probably two that come up most often. One of them is his plan for dealing with vacant and abandoned houses. He was very aggressively going to either knock them down or try and get them rehabbed, and in many instances that meant knocking them down. Those homes were located disproportionately in older neighborhoods with high African-American populations, Hispanic populations, and people said that he was too quick to knock things down. The other knock that comes against him is actually one about law enforcement, and people may say the crime rate is down, but the way you look at it could indicate that some crime numbers are up. And then there's also a bit of a controversy regarding some recordings of and then demotion of a previous chief of police.
Well, I'd like to read some phrases used recently in headlines about Pete Buttigieg. Quote, Pete Buttigieg is the hottest thing in politics. Pete Buttigieg is having a moment. Pete Buttigieg just had one hell of a week. The Pete Buttigieg boom. Mayor Pete is the Mr. Rogers of presidential candidates. How is he able to generate so much positive press, do you think?
I think part of it, he is a very nice guy. He is a genuine person when you meet him. He's the person you're meeting. He actually does want to help people. And he's very good at actually listening to what people have to say. We go back to the vacant and abandoned housing plan he had. There are a number of people who did not like that plan initially who came to his side after he sat down and listened to them and then modified the plan in order to take into consideration their concerns. So I think that's part of it. And then once again, this is just a unique moment when a non-traditional candidate has an opportunity The question is, will he be able to continue to meet expectations and show momentum moving forward? It's a long time still until Iowa.
I know. What is your sense, having had a sort of up close and local look at Pete Buttigieg, about whether or not he'll be able to continue with the momentum he's been enjoying?
I think in many respects this has happened a lot faster than people would have expected. And so the danger, of course, is that he'll be viewed as peaking too soon. But since there is no primary, there is no caucus coming up for a number of months, as long as he's able to hit targets in terms of fundraising, as long as he continues to show well in polls, he'll be able to say he is continuing to show progress. He's continuing to meet the expectations that are out there. There are a lot of people who would have said he wouldn't be in this position right now. So I think it would maybe be unwise to write him off. But at the same time, it is still a long time until Iowa.
Absolutely. All right, Andy Downs in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Thanks very much, Andy.
My pleasure.